The essay competition is fully free to join and open to students from around the world. And we celebrate these rising thinkers, that's all of you, and spark the ideas that'll shape our future. So over the course of the next 30 to 45 minutes, we'll be covering what the award is, what the judging criteria are, how to understand the prompts, and then we'll also be covering some things on AI, writing style, and sources. So without further ado, let's talk about the competition, which is what you're all here to learn about. So two lucky scholars who might be in this room, who might not be, but I'm hoping you guys are, because you're clearly the best workshop group, will win the first and second place awards. The first place award is a $1,000 cash award and a full scholarship to Lumiere's individual research program. And the second place is a $500 cash reward and a $2,000 scholarship to Lumiere's individual research program. In addition to that, depending on the number of applications, we'll also be giving out the Rising Scholars Award, which is a $1,000 scholarship to our program. And these awards will be decided by this incredible judging panel of people who are volunteering their time to work with us and who truly represent the top of their fields. We have professors from Cornell, Brown, Oxford, Cambridge, Dartmouth, Duke, NYU, and Carnegie Mellon. And these are amazing researchers who are excited to read your ideas and essays and figure out which one of you deserves these awards. And all of us who are judging the competition are going to be judging it on 5 criteria. The first is originality. Are you putting forward old ideas that we've seen time and time again? Or are you putting forward a fresh, new perspective that brings together things in ways that we hadn't imagined, makes us think harder? Is this an essay that will stay with us for hours or days after we're done reading it? So that's originality. The second is analysis, which is you might have an original idea, but are you supporting that with arguments that make sense? So are you demonstrating a thorough understanding of the subject? Are you making strong and clear arguments for the perspective that you're putting forward? The third is evidence. So in addition to logical arguments, are you drawing on existing evidence using credible integrated sources? Are you drawing on academic research in the field, whether that's quantitative or qualitative research? Are you drawing on newspaper reports that are reliable and authoritative? And how are you using all this evidence effectively in building up your argument? Number 4 is structure. It's possible to have a brilliant argument and a brilliant perspective, really good arguments and really good evidence, but presented in a way that's super hard to follow, confused, that goes from idea to idea back and forth. We want well-structured essays where there are clear paragraphs. Each paragraph contains one big idea. The ideas flow and build on each other. And that also includes, along the way, counter arguments that you're looking at and responding to. And finally is presentation. We want students who are dotting their I's and crossing their T's, who are checking that the language is formal, grammatically correct, that your wording is precise and academic, that you are citing your sources correctly. So the presentation is as important as the quality and content of your ideas. I see some things in the chat around someone's audio not working, but that seems like that's been sorted. That brings us to what the prompts this year are. We have spent a lot of time trying to think about what the biggest issues of our time of the year, of our generation are. And we've found 6 topics that we think will really get people thinking and create some interesting discussions. In the humanities, topic number 1, how should societies determine which past injustices deserve apologies and reparations from the state? There are many, many things that we've done in history that we now look back on and go, that was not a good thing to do. That includes colonialism, that includes slavery, that includes oppression of many groups. The question is, though, given that there's hundreds of these type instances of bad things that have happened, how should societies today determine which of those in the past deserves an apology and reparations from the state? Does everyone know what reparations means? Does anyone want to define that in the chat? giving money as an apology, basically. That's largely right, but it's basically any kind of like policy or tangible change that you make today to try and repair the damage that had been done in the past. So the word reparation comes from the word repair. And so it could be money that you give to people who are the victims of a past injustice, but it could also be things like quotas in schools. It could be in welfare policy, like if you're public housing, maybe you give certain groups preferential housing. Any of those could be reparations. Awesome. Prompt number 2, how might popular culture reshape our understanding of the world around us? I don't know if you guys have watched this, but last night I watched K-pop Demon Hunters, which is a movie on Netflix, which is about a K-pop band, an animated K-pop band that fights demons through the power of their voice. And that got me thinking about how incredibly powerful K-pop is as a fandom, and how much millions and millions of people around the world watch these artists and engage with them and care about them and follow them. I don't know if you guys watched the Taylor Swift Eras Tour, but I went twice last year, which is something I'm personally proud of, and I'm eagerly awaiting the Life of a Showgirl. There's Hollywood, there's TV shows, there's all of this popular culture that has an enormous amount of impact on the world around us. And the question is, how does this popular culture reshape our understanding of the world? Is it positive? Is it not? So why are we talking about movie? Because the second humanities topic about popular culture is about movies and TV shows and music and all of those things that people around us are thinking about. Moving on to the topics in the social sciences. What kinds of social problems are chatbots good at solving? And what kinds of social problems are they bad at solving? So you guys all use ChatGPT and generative AI, and you see more and more chatbots coming up. And chatbots are now being used in a ton of different areas. You have customer service chatbots. Anytime you guys have an issue with Uber or a website, the help assistant that you get is probably an AI chatbot. You have mental health and therapy chatbot. You have friendship and romantic chatbots. You have learning-based chatbots to help people learn different educational concepts. Chatbots and AI-based chatbots in particular are being used and applied across a huge variety of industries and use cases. And the question is, what kinds of social problems are they good at solving, and what kinds of social problems are they bad at solving? Number 4, what is the future of social media? Yeah, I agree. There's things in the chat that says never a good idea to have a romantic relationship with an AI. Hard agree. It has turned out bad in most cases, so would not recommend that. So that would be an example of a social problem. So loneliness might be an example of a social problem. The chatbot is bad at solving, but maybe not. That's what the debate is. Number 4 is, what is the future of social media as a tool to challenge those in positions of power? So you guys might not remember this, but in 2011, when Twitter was taking off, Facebook was taking off, the world was convinced that things like Twitter and Facebook and social media, by giving power to the people, by giving a voice to the voiceless, by allowing people to share images and videos of atrocities that were going on, would create a wave of democratization around the world, that dictators would no longer be able to hold on to power because their grip on power will be challenged by social media. However, today we're seeing a whole other perspective on social media. You're seeing social media being blamed for loneliness and isolation, for political polarization and radicalization. And the question is, what is the future of social media? Is it a tool that actually can challenge those in positions of power? Or does it simply buttress their power and increase the power of those who already have it in society? Finally, in the natural sciences, so we have 2 topics. The first one in the natural sciences is, how do modern internet-based social media affect adolescent emotional and social development? So lots and lots of teenagers, and increasingly even middle schoolers and elementary schoolers, are on social media of different kinds. And the question is, what does that do to grow up in a social media world? In what ways is being able to learn about the world around you, to engage with friends and family through social media positive? And to what extent does it increase things like loneliness? Does it increase comparison with each other? To what extent can it be, because can it cause bullying and things like that for adolescents? And how does it affect their psychological and health well-being? So that's on kind of the psychological and social well-being of adolescents due to the internet and social media. And finally, this is a topic that was suggested by one of our judging panel. And while I know very little about it, I kind of love it, which is what can be accomplished with a million noiseless qubits. This is about quantum computing and the future of quantum computing. And it asks you to take a position on, if we get to the point where quantum computing really takes off and we can and it achieves things that we currently are not able to do, how will that affect science? How will that affect society? How will that affect technology? It asks you to imagine what the future of quantum computing can be and what the applications of that across different areas would be. So these are the 6 prompts before you. You are required to pick one of these prompts and write an essay on them. We'll talk about how to pick prompts in a second. So step 1 is you pick a prompt. We'll talk about how to do that. Second is you select key perspectives. So you begin reading up about that prompt. You go on Perplexity, you go on Google Scholar, you start reading up about the prompt, and you try and understand, what are the different academic perspectives on this? What are people already saying? What is the debate that has already been had? Based on that, you try and develop a perspective of your own that is new and unique. Maybe you bring 2 camps together. Maybe you put 2 camps in conversation with each other. Maybe it's something that someone hasn't thought of before. You then support that perspective with evidence. So you find existing research, studies, surveys, experiments that support your argument. But you also address multiple viewpoints, because there'll always be people that disagree with you. In fact, the judges might disagree with you. So you have to anticipate what the people that disagree with you would say, and then respond to those concerns in your essay. That will then get you to the first draft of your essay. You put it away in a drawer for a bit, or a folder on your computer, and then come back to it in 24 hours, reread it, and go, oh my God, this is awful. What was I thinking? And then you edit and rewrite. You try and fix it so that the holes in the argument that you hadn't noticed before are now being addressed, that the structure makes as much sense as possible. You clean it up, you edit, you rewrite, and then you submit. So let's look at a sample case study. This is a prompt that is not one of our 6 prompts, but we'll use this as a way to look at how you might approach a prompt. So the prompt here is, how should schools balance the opportunities of AI with the need to protect educational integrity? We see that AI is really taking off. Almost every student I know has used it. But how can the opportunities that presents be balanced with the need to promote educational integrity? So you might start reading up about this, and you might realize that there's 2 kind of perspectives at play. You might notice that a lot of research is showing that AI has enormous short-term efficiency gains, that if students use it in a classroom, they create amazing, beautiful essays, that they're able to learn material quicker. But then you might take a step back and go, what's the long-term goal of education? The long-term goal of education is to teach people to be critical thinkers, to think for themselves, to know how to tell right from wrong and correct from incorrect. And so you might pit these 2 against each other and use a framework like digital ethics or educational equity to guide your argument and say, using the perspective of educational equity, I'll make the argument that the short-term efficiency gains of AI in education are far outweighed by the long-term harms to learning outcomes. And then you'll go into what educational equity is. It's a principle by which we say that education should be evaluated not just by are students learning or not, but what the distributional effects in society are. Are all people in society, and particularly those who are who lack privilege, who belong to lower socioeconomic classes, who might have been marginalized historically, are they being uplifted by education? So that's the idea of educational equity. The short-term efficiency gains, and then you'll recap what the research shows about the short-term education efficiency gains. And then you'll talk about the long-term outcomes, and you'll talk about the risks of over-reliance on AI, like plagiarism, loss of critical thinking. You might use case studies of schools or universities that have adopted AI tools responsibly and use that to make the argument that the long-term harms are worse than the short-term gains. And then you go, aha, but there are counter arguments. There are people that might say that banning AI may widen inequality or stifle innovation. So you then bring up those counter arguments and address them. And you might then conclude your essay by recommending policies or practices that effectively balance innovation in AI with preserving academic honesty and deep learning. So that would be an example of a good essay that takes these two perspectives, use the framework to analyze them, and addresses counter arguments as they come up. So what makes a strong argument? For those of you who don't know, have been a debater for most of my life. I debated in high school. I was captain of the Harvard debate team. I also coached the Indian national team at the World Schools Debating Championship. So I've spent a lot of time thinking about arguments. And I think the three big things that make a strong argument is, first, that you use strong evidence, that you rely on reliable data, research, statistics, and that these come from trustworthy sources. We'll talk in a second about what a trustworthy source is and how to identify one. The second is that you don't just bring up the evidence and leave it there. You explain what the context of that is and why it matters to the specific argument you're making. And then finally, you connect it to your overall argument of the essay or the overall perspective of the essay. And what I mean by that is your essay will have one central argument, but each of those will then have specific sub-arguments, and each of those sub-arguments will have pieces of evidence. But you should never lose sight of what the overall thing that your essay, the point that the essay is trying to make is, and tie every argument you make back to that overall point of the essay. Great. Let's talk about citations and sources. So anytime you mention a fact, a statistic, or a data, you can't be, so that we know that you're not making it up, you need to be citing a reliable source. In addition to that, when you quote or paraphrase someone else's ideas or research, you also need to be citing the person from whom you got that idea or research. And finally, if you refer to theories, models, or academic arguments, you then also need to be citing the source that you got that from. Why is this important? It's important because academic research and essays are a conversation, and it's a conversation that passes through all of time and history between many, many different academics and researchers. And the currency of this industry, the value of this industry, is the ideas that people put forward. So when you use somebody else's ideas or use somebody else's work without citing them, you are effectively stealing from them and stealing their time, their energy, the resources that have gone into making this. And so you need to give credit to original authors to avoid plagiarism. Secondly, it also strengthens your arguments, because if you make a point and you cite and you mention a figure, the judges might not believe you. They might be skeptical. They might go, is this really true? Whereas if you're able to cite that source and show that it was research done by a really well-recognized university that looked at 20,000 survey responses, that did an experiment that had 5,000 participants, that immediately then strengthens the credibility in the eyes of the judge as well. And finally, you're also doing citations so that if a reader looks at your paper and goes, that's really interesting, it's got me thinking, I want to learn more, they're then able to go to your citations and follow the citations and read up what you meant, read up the papers that you've flagged in your citations to learn more about it. In terms of how to do it, you are required to use the MLA citation style. So that means within your essay, when you cite an idea or a statistic, you then do an in-text citation, which has the last name of the authors and the page number that you got that from. So for example, if you're citing a paper written by John Smith and the idea that you're expressing was on page 452 of that paper, you would say Smith 452 inside of your essay next to the idea that you use. You then at the end of the essay provide a full reference list of all of the references that you've cited in the MLA 8th edition format. And please make sure that citations match exactly between in text essays and the reference list at the end. So here's an example of a few different types. I'm not going to go into this in too much detail because there's many, many resources available online about how the MLA 8th edition works. But if you're citing a journal article written by John Smith and a couple of other people, in text, you'd say Smith et al. 452. In the reference list, you would say Smith, John et al. Climate change effects, nature climate change, and then the volume and the pages. Similarly, you could cite books, you could cite government reports or websites, and you'd cite each of them differently. Awesome. I'm just going to pause there and skim through the chat. I think Tung is responding to as many of those as possible, though you guys are very, very quick at asking questions. So I think we might be a little bit behind, but we're getting there. Please look through the chat before you type as well. And that will allow you to maybe see if somebody else has asked the question that you've asked. Thank you to the good folks in the group who are responding to other people's questions as well. We thank you for your service. It does not give you any additional points in the essay competition, but we thank you for your service. There is a question that says, do you need to bring out new ideas or build on the previous one? So the whole idea of an essay competition like this is that you are putting forward a new perspective that builds on existing research in the field. So you would ideally be taking, let's say there are these two camps of researchers and they've been doing their own research, but they've never really engaged with each other. And you look at that and you go, I actually think if you brought those two ideas in conversation with each other, it creates new tensions or conflicts. So maybe it complements each other really well. You would then say, bringing together this set of ideas and this set of ideas, I'm going to argue X, Y, Z. And then you'll explain what those different sets of ideas are, what the evidence there is, and how you're bringing them together. That would be an example of a really effective way of building a perspective based on existing research. Utkarsh says very fluent English. I don't know if that's a compliment to me or just a description of the type of essay you need to write, but you are right that the essay will need to be in very fluent English. How do sources work? So here's how you identify credible sources. The gold standard for a credible source is any source that has been peer reviewed. Who knows what peer review is actually in the chat while I get a drink of water? Fatima says, a friend review your work? Not quite. Reviewed by someone of your own level. That's closer, but in particular, when it's academic research, what does peer review of academic research look like? Yeah, reviewed by credible people that are professors. So here's what peer review is. The way that academic research works is you have professors at universities who are doing research, your PhD students like I was doing research, and then we write up our findings in the form of a research paper, and then that gets sent to 2 or more academic researchers in our field who read that paper without knowing the name or title of the author, and then make a decision about whether the ideas and research presented in that paper are of good enough quality that it deserves to be published. So the idea there is you are getting your ideas and work vetted by others in your field who are also experts in that area. And that then results often in them rejecting your work or asking for changes and edits. And it's only after multiple rounds of those edits that you might actually be published. And so if your paper has been published in a peer-reviewed journal, i.e. reviewed by professors and experts in the field, that is considered the highest quality and level of reliability of work. So this is journals like Nature or the Lancet, where any research that's published can be considered highly credible. You could also look at the expertise of the author. So what are the author's qualifications? Is it a random person that has never published before, or is it a highly recognized author in the field who has who's won awards for their writing, who's at an institution that's highly credible? So if you're a PhD holder, a university professor, a recognized expert, your research and work would be considered more credible than someone who isn't. Also check the reputation of the publisher. So if there's a book published by the Cambridge University Press, then you can be pretty sure that they've done their work to make sure that these ideas and the arguments are accurate and vetted. If it comes from an international institution like the WHO, if it comes from a reputable government organization like the US Census Bureau, these are all publishers that are considered highly reputable. Also consider the purpose of the source. So a university or a university press like the Cambridge University Press is in the business of trying to get the best ideas out in the world. So if you find a research paper that is arguing against self-driving vehicles that's published by MIT versus a paper about arguing against self-driving vehicles published by the Taxi Drivers Union of New York, then you can be sure that one is more credible than the other because the union or an advocacy group has a specific goal that they want to achieve in the world. And so what they publish, you might not think is as unbiased or credible as somebody who is more, who doesn't have a stake in the game. I see a raised hand. I'm not going to get to raised hands yet. So if you have a question, put in the chat. And then if your question isn't answered, we can get to you at the end. You'd also want to look at recency. So ideally, information is as up to date as possible. So a research paper that was published in 2024 might be more reliable than a paper that was published in 1972. Look at the evidence that they use to support their claims and also how transparent they are. Are they very clear about the methodology they use, the sources they use? Are they providing detailed explanations? And that makes a big difference on the quality of the research. So to find free and credible resources, good sources are places like JSTOR, ResearchGate, Google Scholar, PubMed, academic books, or government and international organizations. Sources to avoid are personal blogs by random people on the internet. Wikipedia is a good starting point to learn about the topic, but never cite Wikipedia. Wikipedia has a list of citations at the end. So find the citation that Wikipedia has cited, read up on that, and then you can try citing that instead. Social media, biased advocacy sites, or non-peer reviewed or opinion articles without evidence. Awesome. That's on sources. I see that IR haunts you, but I don't know what IR is. So you might have to explain that for me. But I think that's a global perspectives thing. I apologize for any PTSD. AI and originality. So it's really important that the essays you submit are original and independent. So original means your ideas, arguments, and analysis must be created by you, not copied from others. That you express your thoughts in your own style and words, even when referring to existing research. You don't imitate someone else's language, structure, or insights too closely. And originality means bringing new perspectives or interpretations, not just repeating facts. And independent means that you are responsible for every step of your essay, from research and planning to drafting and revising. You are not allowed to hire or depend on others to write or substantially shape your essay. AI tools can be used as learning aids, so for brainstorming, for checking grammar, not to create ideas or analysis. And similarly, you can think of guidance from teachers, mentors, or peers, similar to how you can use AI tools, which is that they can help you brainstorm, they can give you feedback or proofread, but not actually in the process of writing or generating ideas. Every participant is required to declare any use of AI tools in connection with their essay. So if AI was used, you must clearly specify the extent and purpose of its usage. Any use of AI will negatively impact the evaluation, and extensive reliance on AI may result in disqualification. If you have an incomplete or misleading declaration, that could lead to disqualification as well at the discretion of the academic advisory board. Where should we declare it? When you submit the essay, there's a form on the form. There's a question that says, how did you use AI? So please there, anything that you use AI for, including grammar checks, ideas, and so on, just put it there. As long as you've declared it and it's within the fair use of the competition, you won't be penalized for it. Perfect. let's talk about style. So this award seeks well-reasoned, research-based argumentative essays. We do not want or expect original research papers. So you're not expected to do experiments or primary data collection, but your paper needs to be clear and formal. So that means using formal academic language, following a clear essay structure, so introduction, body, conclusion, keeping your writing concise and to the point, using the active voice wherever possible, and ensuring logical organization throughout the essay. Don'ts are using slang or casual expressions, being wordy or vague, using contractions like don't or can't, using first person like I, and mixing in personal opinions. Those are do nots. So for example, people today really need stronger rules about pollution because it's harmful and makes people sick. Research shows it's a serious problem. That is weak. What are some reasons why that is not a good sentence or good couple of sentences to write in an essay? There's no evidence. That's right. It says research shows it's a serious problem. Anytime someone says the phrase research shows, a part of my soul dies inside because I'm like, research can't show anything. Researchers, through explaining what their research is, can maybe make an argument. Language is repetitive. That's right. It's making the same point over and over again. It's also using informal language. It's apostrophe S is a classic example. And it also is phrased as a personal opinion. Like it's just saying people really need stronger rules. Who says so? An improved version of it would be environmental regulation should be reinforced to reduce the serious health threats linked to pollution. Studies demonstrate that greater pollutant exposure is associated with higher rates of respiratory illness. It is then citing the studies that show that, and therefore strong policy measures are necessary to address these public health concerns. That is using formal language. It is citing the studies that it's talking about, and it's being specific about what the harms are that this essay is concerned about. Awesome. Can you please go to the previous slide for the screenshot? I'm not sure which one you're talking about, but the slides, the recording will be sent out by tomorrow, so you'll get access to all of that. Perfect. I saw a question in the chat which says, how do you submit the essay? So before submitting, you make sure of the following things: that your essay addresses one of the 6 prompts directly and clearly, that your essay is less than 2,000 words, that is excluding citations and references, that your essay uses the MLA 8th edition style for in-text citations and the works cited list, that the essay has no personal identifiers. On the form, we'll ask you for your name and school, but the content of the essay itself should not have any personal identifiers so that it is anonymous when judges are judging it, that you have declared any AI usage on the submission form, and that the essay is submitted by November 2nd. You then submit your essay through the submission form that we'll put in the chat. We'll put in both the submission form and a link to the website in the chat, and you'll have both of those. And the submissions are due by November 2nd. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. But I am so glad that all of you are here, that you're thinking about the world around us and figuring out how to engage with it and make it better. I am super, super excited to read your essays. We'll stick around for another 5 to 10 minutes to answer any questions, but this is the end of the formal presentation. If you have no questions, you're good to go. I hope that was useful and interesting, and good luck with the essays.